This is Jonathan Gilliam. You can find me on Twitter, @JGilliam_Seal, and on Facebook, Instagram, everything else, Jonathan T. Gilliam. Listen, if you're ever wondering what would happen if one of these states' governments started sending their police departments in to just start taking your guns, that's pretty much what's happening in Virginia. And next, at the top of the hour, my good buddy Brian Kovacs from TalkingGuns.com is going to come on, and we're going to discuss exactly what's happening. Actually, it's kind of an example of how I think people should come together and stand against these idiotic laws that are violating our constitutional rights. And the police department's there, and the people are coming together, and that's what we need to see. This is Jonathan Gilliam. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. While we're there, go pre-order my new book, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs. It's a parent's book for children. You're going to love it, and get Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. You can still get them now before Christmas arrives. We'll be right back. Of this. Now, let's move on to what we were talking about before with the laws and the legal system and how they have been manipulated by the left. And I think a perfect example of the potential of this and how you should respond to it, not just with the way Tyrone Ty Tucker and Lauren Jedi are responding to the way was forced to sit in jail for 2 years down in Key West with no evidence, but in Virginia, they're writing the laws exactly like they wrote in Virginia. They're attempting to go after guns, and now you have Second Amendment sanctuary cities popping up. And I figured, let's bring on Brian Kovacs. He's a good buddy of mine. He is the I don't know if you're the creator, but you're the guy that runs TalkingGuns.com. They're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Incredible videos, incredible content. And you yourself were a prison guard in a very high-level prison with some really bad guys. Tell everybody what these sanctuary cities are for the Second Amendment in Virginia.
Well, thanks. It's great to be on with you, Jonathan. Basically, 94 cities so far in Virginia, basically cities and counties have signed on to be Second Amendment sanctuaries, basically saying that they are not going to enforce anything that is unconstitutional when it comes to these new regulations that they're trying to pass. And the new regulations that they're trying to pass in regards to firearms specifically, rifles, pistols, shotguns, they all have very, very deceptive wording in them to include almost everything on the market.
Well, so when it comes to what's actually happening down there, right, and these sheriffs and police chiefs, is it mostly law enforcement that's saying that we are not going to stand for this, or are there city officials in these places that are actually standing with law enforcement?
No, there is city officials that are standing with law enforcement. And as you know, the sheriff is kind of the last bastion of your constitutional rights. He can choose to not enforce a law, which in a sense would nullify it in his jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So if they try to say, hey, we're going to come in and do this, he can actually stop any other law enforcement from coming in, obviously until they challenge him in court for something like that.
Right. And then the other part about this, which I found very interesting, is that I'm seeing reports that there are organized militias in and around Virginia that are now stepping up and saying that they will stand with law enforcement and prevent any of these weapons from being taken.
Absolutely. I mean, the left is already saying that they're going to utilize the National Guard to start confiscating weapons and things like this. I don't really see that happening. It's a possibility. Don't get me wrong. We don't know how far they're willing to go with things like this.
Hey, I didn't see myself getting in a fight with a bunch of these people last Saturday, so who knows? Who knows?
Exactly. That's a great example, too. So the way that I see it is the National Guard's first, duty is to uphold the Constitution of the United States. That's a major part of why they're there. The whole point of them doing that, the whole point of them having that as in their guidelines, they're not going to sit there and use their weapons against innocent civilians that are law-abiding. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, go ahead.
But I think it's an interesting thing seeing militias of people rising up and saying, we're not going to take this, we're not going to stand for this, when clearly the legislators aren't going with what the personal agendas, it seems like.
Yeah, and so that's what I was going to get. Two things that come out of what you just said. One, militias are organized groups of civilians. That's all they are. They're organized groups of civilians. So it's not like they're crazy, groups that are hell-bent on an ideology. Most of these people are just constitutionalists. The other thing is that there's precedence for what's happening in New Jersey, is there not?
Well, what's very interesting is the laws are strikingly similar. The way they've written them out, and let me just give you the gist of it, is basically in New Jersey, they specifically state semi-automatic rifle, and they say has the ability to accept detachable magazines and has two of the following: a folding or telescopic stock, a pistol grip which protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon, a bayonet mount, a flash suppressor or threaded barrel designed to accommodate a flash suppressor, and grenade launcher. But it also states that if a firearm isn't listed by name, then it may be considered to be substantially identical if it has those qualities. So basically, if it looks like, then it will be, and that is a banned firearm, which then you become a felon. Now, in Virginia, their exact interpretation is a semi-automatic centerfire rifle that expels single or multiple projectiles by action of an explosion of a combustible material and has the ability to accept a detachable magazine with one of the following characteristics: a folding or telescopic stock, a pistol grip, a thumb hole stock, a second hand grip or protruding grip, bayonet mount, grenade launcher, flare launcher, a silencer, a flash suppressor, a muzzle brake, a muzzle compensator, or threaded barrel. And then it says at the very end, any characteristic of like kind as enumerated in clauses 1 through 12. So in all those examples, if it looks like, then it is.
This is, so basically they just put almost every form of weapon that you can come up with, it's a long gun at least, on that list, or even mini pistols.
Absolutely. And it's the same for pistols and shotguns. They all consider that verbiage in there. And it says specifically any characteristic of like kind as enumerated in clauses, that they've listed. So basically that's every weapon on the market. It's deeply disturbing.
Now, you grew up in Jersey, but you live in the free state of Arizona, which I love. Arizona, next to my home state of Arkansas, is probably my most favorite place. What is it about? Explain this real quick. This is not really off topic, but it kind of relates to it. In Arizona, if you're a citizen and you have a pulse, you can carry a gun. It's constitutional carry. How scary is it? I know the answer to this question, but how scary is it for civilians to go out on the street and worry that they're going to be shot by some individual who's just carrying a gun, who's not a criminal, just somebody who says, that's my constitutional right? Is it scary there? Do you feel threatened all the time?
Absolutely not, because basically everybody has a potential to be carrying a firearm. So number one, in a lot of circumstances, criminals think twice about, committing a crime of opportunity against somebody, like carjacking or robbery, anything like that. Number two, I feel safer knowing that people, other citizens like myself, have firearms and are able to defend me if necessary, or the other people that are around.
Yeah. Now, here's the other thing. You came from New Jersey. You live in Arizona. It's a free state. Unlike New Jersey, New York, and now Virginia, a lot of these places, even Texas. I have bad news for you, Texas. You're going left fast. But, Brian, I want to ask you two things. One, you worked in a very high-security prison for a long time. Do you think that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
In my opinion, I almost find it physically impossible that he would be able to.
Right. The second thing is, I wanted to ask you, though, is President Trump still your president?
He is. He's still all of our presidents.
That's correct. You answered those correctly. You get an A. Paul Callan was on earlier. He's a former New York homicide prosecutor. And we were talking in between the breaks. I didn't want to get into it with him, but you should see his face when I asked him about Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, that is a story that just kind of went away, right? But the weirdness about that is that the high level of people he's connected to, the way that the media passes on that and focuses on this president says so much about who these people are. And I guess the last question I want to ask you before we get to the end of this interview and explain this for the people. You worked around criminals. I locked a lot of criminals up. I investigated them when I was in the FBI. I followed them. But you literally were with them. You had conversations with them. You got to know some of these people. How similar is their behavior to these politicians that you see in the way that they're disregarding the Constitution, trying to take away our weapons, setting themselves up, just like a mob figure, setting themselves up to be in power and in control and to take more money? How similar is the behavior there?
Well, what's interesting about what you're saying is criminals are always looking to prey on people, that regardless of what they do or what they're in for. So they've all done something to prey on people. And obviously, making people or having people that are forced into being victims makes them an easier target. There's less of a chance of fighting, less of a chance of them protecting themselves. It makes it more conducive to the criminals' environment versus the other places like Free America, Arizona, where we have, like you said, we have constitutional carry. Everybody pretty much has a gun, or everybody can have a gun. So inside, let's just put it this way, inside of a super maximum custody facility, there are still people who get hard drugs, weapons, all kinds of contraband inside of somewhere where they can't even have contact with other people. And they're locked up for 20 hours a day. Mm-hmm. So when you think about that, it's very similar to the outside world in a lot of these, left-run areas of the country. There's a lot of criminals running around doing whatever they want. And inside the prison, they're still able to get things. And we try our best to stop that. We try our best to make sure that they don't have access to things to hurt us, kill us, or hurt or kill the other, people within the units.
Right.
But it's still it's a battle. It's a constant battle with them. So.
And you see this all in politics. And we've had this conversation many times.
It seems to be all the same. It's take. And it's not give and take anymore. Years ago, there used to be a give and take within politics from both sides. You give a little, you get a little, everybody's happy, people come out with a mutual benefit. Nowadays, it's all I want, and they're not even giving the other people a chance to speak about it.
Right.
And it's crazy. You would be surprised at how many rights inmates have nowadays. They get iPods. They get all kinds of things that people on the outside don't even have the luxury of getting. They get it just because they're incarcerated.
And I'll give you 30 seconds here real quick. What do you think is going to be the future of this? I mean, I've talked to somebody who's been held in prison with no evidence for 2 years. I've talked to Paul Callan, who's a former homicide prosecutor, and what's happening in New York, letting all these people out, no more bail. I talked to Scott Eulinger, who's saying that everything that's happened is very similar to an intel operation he would handle. What do you see over the next year while this president, I wouldn't say struggle, he's not struggling, but tries to get reelected? Just 10 seconds. What do you think is going to happen this next year?
I think that you're going to have a lot of interesting issues with voter suppression and voter fraud coming out of these people who are being released, because they're going to go try to vote, and they're going to try to go for people who are going to give them the most stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to end up with that in these states where they're giving out driver's licenses, and they're allowing them to have all the amenities that are basically reserved for citizens.
That's a good point to end on, because I'm going to talk to Dr. Ben Carson here shortly about the homeless rate, which this is all leading to. Brian, thank you very much. From TalkingGuns.com. You can find him on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Talking Guns. Go check it out. This is Jonathan Gillum. We'll be right back in just a minute. 800-941-7326. I'll try to get 2-year phone calls and go get my book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and The Adventures of Team Little Bigs. We'll be right back.